Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his metal hands and looked at the broken engine in front of him. The repair bay of Kepler Station was hot and filled with the smell of burned circuits. Jake had been fixing starships for 20 years, and his prosthetic arms were better than the real ones he lost in the war. They never got tired and could reach into spaces too small for normal hands. The station sat at the edge of human space where few ships came to visit. Most people who ended up here were running from something or looking for something they could not find anywhere else. Jake liked it that way because nobody asked too many questions and he could work in peace. Lisa Carter walked into the bay carrying a cup of coffee and shaking her head. She was young and smart and helped Jake with the computer systems he did not understand very well. Her brown hair was always tied back and she wore the same blue coveralls every day. "Another smuggler ship broke down near the asteroid belt," she said, and handed him the coffee. "Captain says his drive core is making strange noises." Jake nodded and took a sip. The coffee was bitter, but it kept him awake during the long shifts. "Tell him to bring it in. We will take a look." Before Lisa could answer, the station alarm started making noise. 3 long beeps meant a ship was asking permission to dock. Jake looked at the main screen and saw a small transport ship limping toward them. Black smoke was coming from its engines, and it looked like it might fall apart at any moment. "That does not look like one of ours," Lisa said, and pointed at the strange design of the ship. It was long and curved like a snake, and covered in what looked like scales instead of metal plates. Jake had seen alien ships before, but not many came to Kepler Station. Most aliens stayed in their own space and humans stayed in theirs. The few times they met, it was usually for trade or sometimes trouble. "Better call Commander Stone," Jake said and put down his coffee. Rachel Stone was the military officer in charge of station security, and she did not like surprises. The alien ship docked with a loud crash that shook the whole station. Jake could hear metal bending and something breaking inside the docking bay. Whoever was flying that ship was either very bad at it or very hurt. Lisa was already talking to Commander Stone on her radio when the docking bay doors opened. Jake grabbed his tool belt and walked toward the airlock. He could see movement inside the alien ship, but it was too dark to make out what was there. A tall figure stepped out of the ship and Jake took a step back. The alien was almost 8 feet tall with green and brown scales covering its body. It had long arms and legs and a face that looked like a mix between a lizard and a bird. Most surprising were its eyes, which were large and golden, but seemed to look at nothing. The alien was carrying a walking stick and moved very slowly, like someone who could not see where they were going. It wore what looked like a suit made of the same scale material as its ship, but the suit was damaged with wires hanging out and dark patches where something had burned through. Behind the alien came a small floating robot that made beeping sounds. The robot had lights on top that flashed different colors, and Jake realized it was trying to talk. "Greetings, human person," the robot said in a voice that sounded like it was coming through water. "This one is Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. This one seeks help for damaged exosuit and damaged seeing organs." Jake looked at the alien called Kethvar and saw that his golden eyes had white clouds in them. The alien was blind, and his suit, which probably helped him move and see, was broken. The robot kept making beeping sounds and flashing lights. "This one was Great Warrior Pilot," the robot continued. "Space pirates damaged ship and suit in battle. This one cannot see and cannot fight. This one has shame and seeks help to fix suit, so this one can serve Empire again." Lisa came up behind Jake and whispered in his ear. "Commander Stone is on her way. She says be careful and do not touch anything." Jake ignored her and walked toward the alien. Kethavar turned his head toward the sound of footsteps, and Jake could see hope in those clouded eyes. "I am Jake Morrison," he said slowly and clearly. "I fix things that are broken. Let me look at your suit." Kethvar said something in his own language, and the robot beeped a few times before translating. "This one is grateful. This one will pay with Imperial credits or rare metals from home world." Jake walked around the alien and examined the damaged suit. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Where human technology used metal and circuits, this suit seemed to be alive. There were things that looked like veins running through it and parts that moved like they were breathing. The damage was bad. Burn marks covered most of the back where something had hit it with energy weapons. Wires and tubes were cut and hanging loose. The helmet area where the eye sensors should be was completely destroyed with melted metal and burned organic parts. "This is not like our technology," Jake said, and touched one of the organic tubes. It felt warm and slightly wet like real skin. "Zephyrian biotechnology," the robot explained. "Suit interfaces with nervous system and enhances natural abilities. Optical enhancement allows seeing in many spectrums and targeting of enemies. Strength enhancement allows lifting of heavy objects and improved combat performance." Jake nodded and continued his examination. He had never worked on anything like this before, but he could see the logic in how it was built. The organic parts carried information like nerves in a body, while the mechanical parts provided power and structure. "How long has it been broken?" Jake asked. Kethvar spoke and the robot translated. 7 cycles of home star. This one has been blind and weak since battle with pirates. Clan healers say suit cannot be repaired. This one sought human mechanic. Because humans are known for fixing impossible things. Jake smiled at that. Humans did have a reputation for being stubborn about giving up on broken things. During the war, he had seen mechanics bring dead ships back to life with nothing but spare parts and determination. "I can try," Jake said finally. "But I do not know anything about your biotechnology. I might make it worse." Kethvar spoke quickly and excitedly. The robot had trouble keeping up with the translation. "This one accepts risk. This one has no honor without suit. This one would rather die trying than live in shame." Commander Stone arrived with 2 security guards and looked nervous when she saw the alien. She was a small woman with short red hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "What do we have here, Morrison?" she asked and kept her hand near her weapon. "Disabled veteran looking for help," Jake replied. "Same as any of us, really." Stone looked at Kethvar and seemed to relax a little when she saw his condition. "Any weapons on him?" Jake looked at the damaged suit and shook his head. "If there were, they are not working now. This suit is completely dead." Stone nodded and stepped back. "Okay, but I want to know everything you do with that alien technology. Earth Command gets nervous about this kind of thing." Jake agreed and turned back to Kethvar. "Come on then, let us see what we can do about fixing you up." As they walked toward the repair bay, Jake wondered what he was getting himself into. He had fixed a lot of strange things over the years, but never anything that was part machine and part living creature. Still, something about the alien's quiet dignity and desperate hope reminded him of himself after he lost his arms in the war. Everyone deserves a second chance, Jake thought as he cleared space on his workbench, even if they come from halfway across the galaxy. Jake spent the first day just staring at the alien suit and trying to understand how it worked. He had taken apart the damaged sections and laid them out on his workbench like pieces of a puzzle. Some parts looked like normal electronics with circuits and power cells. Other parts looked like they belonged inside a living body with tubes that carried fluid and membranes that responded to touch. Lisa brought him food and coffee while he worked, but he barely noticed. He was completely focused on figuring out the connection between the biological and mechanical systems. Every time he thought he understood something, he would find another part that made no sense. "You have been staring at that thing for 12 hours, Lisa said and put a sandwich next to his tools. "Maybe you should get some sleep." Jake shook his head and picked up what looked like a nerve bundle made of metal wires wrapped in organic tissue. "Look at this. It carries electrical signals like a computer cable, but it also carries chemical signals like a real nerve. I have never seen anything like it." Dr. Amy Rodriguez came into the repair bay carrying a medical scanner and looking very interested. She was the station's doctor and scientist who studied alien biology when she had time. Her black hair was streaked with gray, and she wore thick glasses that made her eyes look big. "Commander Stone asked me to help you understand the biological components," she said, and looked at the pieces spread across the workbench. "This is fascinating. The Zephyrians have created technology that works with their natural body systems instead of replacing them." Jake nodded and showed her the damaged optical sensors from the helmet. They looked like a mix between camera lenses and organic eyes, with nerve fibers growing directly into the mechanical parts. "These connected directly to his optic nerves," Amy said, and examined them with her scanner. "When they were working, they probably gave him vision better than natural eyes. Multiple spectrum analysis, infrared heat detection, maybe even targeting systems for combat." "Can we fix them?" Jake asked. Amy frowned and shook her head. "The organic parts are dead. Even if we could repair the mechanical components, we would need living Zephyrian neural tissue to make the interface work." Jake was quiet for a long time, looking at the damaged sensors. He was thinking about his own prosthetic arms and how they connected to his nervous system. Human cybernetics worked differently than Zephyrian biotechnology, but maybe there was a way to bridge the gap. "What if we do not try to fix the organic parts?" he said finally. "What if we replace them with something else?" Amy looked confused. "Replace them with what?" Jake walked over to a storage locker and pulled out a box of military surplus electronics. Inside were sensor arrays and targeting systems from decommissioned fighter ships. The war had ended 5 years ago, and the military was getting rid of old equipment. "Human sensor technology," Jake said, and held up a multi-spectrum camera array. "We cannot grow new Zephyrian nerves, but we can build new human sensors." Lisa looked up from her computer where she was researching Zephyrian anatomy. "But how would you connect human electronics to an alien nervous system? The interfaces are completely different." Jake smiled and picked up one of the biomechanical nerve bundles from the suit. "We build a translator, something that can take signals from human sensors and convert them into signals the suit can understand." For the next 2 days, Jake worked on creating the interface system. He used human neural processors from medical implants to translate between the different signal types. The organic parts of the suit would receive signals they could understand, while the human sensors would provide the actual sensory input. Amy helped by mapping Kethvar's neural pathways using medical scanners. The alien was patient and cooperative, even though he could not see what they were doing. His translator robot explained each step, and Kethvar would nod or make suggestions. "This one is grateful for human kindness," the robot translated during one of the scanning sessions. "This one does not understand why humans help alien stranger." Jake looked up from his work and saw Kethvar's clouded eyes turned toward him. "Same reason anyone helps anyone else. Because it is the right thing to do." The translator robot was quiet for a moment before speaking. "This one says human concepts of honor are different from Zephyrian concepts, but perhaps they lead to same place." The breakthrough came on the 3rd day when Jake finally got the interface system working. He had built a small computer that could take input from human sensors and convert it into the biochemical and electrical signals the alien suit expected. The optical system was the most complex part. Instead of trying to repair the damaged eye, Jake built an external array that mounted on the suit's helmet. The array included normal vision cameras, infrared sensors, ultraviolet detectors, and even radar imaging systems. It was much bulkier than the original organic sensors, but it provided capabilities that even healthy Zephyrian eyes could not match. "Time for a test," Jake said, and connected the last interface cable. Kethvar stood in the middle of the repair, Bay wearing his restored suit. Jake had replaced the damaged back sections with human armor plating and connected new power cells to supplement the organic energy systems. The suit looked strange, with its mix of organic curves and angular human technology, but all the systems showed green on Jake's diagnostic computer. "Activating optical systems," Jake said, and pressed a button on his control panel. Kethvar went very still for a moment, then slowly turned his head from side to side. His golden eyes were still clouded with blindness, but the external sensor array was tracking his head movements perfectly. "This one can see," the translator robot said, but its voice sounded different, somehow more emotional. "This one can see better than ever before." Kethvar walked around the repair bay, looking at everything with wonder. He could see heat signatures from the warm electronics and the electrical fields around powered equipment. When he looked at Jake, he could see the mechanical components of his prosthetic arms glowing with their own heat and electrical activity. "The targeting system is working too," Amy said as she watched the readouts on her scanner. "His reaction time and spatial awareness are off the charts. But the most impressive improvement was in the suit's strength enhancement systems. Jake had replaced the damaged organic amplifiers with human servo motors and actuators. When Kethvar picked up a heavy piece of equipment that normally took 2 people to move, he lifted it easily with one hand. "This one is better than before," the robot translated as Kethvar examined his reflection in a polished metal panel. "This one has been reborn." Jake felt a deep satisfaction watching the alien test his restored capabilities. It was the same feeling he got whenever he brought a dead ship back to life or fixed something everyone else said was impossible. Lisa was documenting everything with her camera and taking notes. "This is incredible, Jake. You have created the first successful human-alien technology hybrid. Earth Command is going to want to study this." Jake nodded, but he was not thinking about reports or recognition. He was thinking about the look of hope and gratitude in Kethvar's damaged eyes and how good it felt to give someone back their life. Commander Stone arrived as they were finishing the final tests. She looked impressed despite her usual caution around alien technology. "Nice work, Morrison," she said, and examined the hybrid suit. "Though I have to ask what happens now. We cannot exactly send him home with classified human military technology built into his suit." Kethvar spoke and the robot translated. "This one understands human concerns. This one gives word that technology will not be shared with Empire without human permission. This one owes life debt to Jake Morrison and humans of Kepler Station." Jake looked at the alien warrior who had arrived broken and hopeless just 3 days ago. Now he stood tall and proud again, ready to return to his people and serve his empire. The hybrid suit hummed quietly as its systems worked in perfect harmony. "I think we can trust him," Jake said finally. "Besides, what is the worst? That could happen?" 3 days after Kethvar left Kepler Station, Jake was back to his normal routine of fixing broken ships and replacing worn-out parts. The alien's visit had been interesting, but now things were quiet again, and Jake preferred it that way. He was working on a transport ship's navigation system when the station's emergency alarm started screaming. Lisa ran into the repair bay with her face white and her hands shaking. "Jake, you need to see this right now," she said and grabbed his arm. Jake followed her to the main command center where Commander Stone was staring at the long-range sensor display with a look of disbelief on her face. On the screen was a contact moving toward them at incredible speed. The computer was having trouble calculating its size because the readings seemed impossible. "How big is that thing?" Jake asked as he looked at the numbers scrolling across the screen. 15 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide," Stone replied without taking her eyes off the display. "It is the largest artificial object our sensors have ever detected." Dr. Rodriguez was at another console running identification programs on the ship's energy signature. Her face was pale, and she kept checking her readings as if she could not believe what she was seeing. "It is Zephyrian," she said quietly. "But not just any Zephyrian ship. According to our database, this is an Imperial dreadnought. There are only 3 of them in existence, and they are personal vessels of the highest-ranking members of the Zephyrian government." Jake felt his stomach drop as he realized what this might mean. "Which one is it?" he asked. Amy's fingers flew over her keyboard as she cross-referenced the sensor data with their files on Zephyrian military vessels. When she found the match, she went completely still. "It is the Sovereign's Talon," she whispered. the personal flagship of Emperor Thekmor himself. The command center went silent except for the quiet humming of computers and the distant sound of the station's life support systems. Everyone was thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Commander Stone was the first to speak. Why would the Zephyrian Emperor come to a remote human outpost? We are nobody important out here. Jake already knew the answer, even though he did not want to admit it. Kethvar must have reported what we did to his superiors. Fixing his suit probably broke some kind of alien law we do not know about. Lisa looked confused. But we helped him. We gave him his life back. Why would that be a problem? Dr. Rodriguez pulled up files on Zephyrian culture and politics on her screen. The Zephyrian Empire is very strict about technology sharing. Any advancement in military or enhancement technology is considered a matter of imperial security. If they think we learned their secrets or improved on their designs, it could be seen as an act of aggression. Stone activated the station's defense systems, but everyone knew they were useless against an Imperial dreadnought. Kepler Station had a few-point defense lasers and some old missile launchers, but they would be like throwing rocks at a mountain. How long until it arrives? Stone asked. 6 hours at current speed, the sensor operator replied. It is not trying to hide its approach. We are getting active scans from their sensors, and they are broadcasting their Imperial identification codes. Jake sat down in an empty chair and tried to think. He had fixed thousands of broken things in his life, but he had never created a problem this big before. When he helped Kethvar, he thought he was just being kind to a fellow warrior who had been hurt in battle. Now it looked like his kindness might start a war. Maybe they are coming to thank us, Lisa said hopefully. Stone shook her head. Imperial dreadnoughts do not make social visits. If the Emperor wanted to thank us, he would send a message or a small diplomatic ship. He is coming here in person, which means this is serious. The next few hours passed slowly as everyone on the station prepared for the unknown. Stone sent emergency messages to Earth Command explaining the situation, but the nearest human military ships were weeks away. If the Emperor wanted to destroy Kepler Station, there was nothing anyone could do to stop him. Jake spent the time reviewing everything he had done to Kethvar's suit. He went over his notes and recordings, trying to figure out what might have upset the Zephyrian government. The hybrid technology was impressive, but it was not like he had stolen alien secrets. He had used human components and human engineering to solve problems the aliens could not fix themselves. Dr. Rodriguez was researching everything she could find about Emperor Thekmor. He is over 300 years old, which makes him ancient, even by Zephyrian standards, she told Jake as they waited. Before he became emperor, he was considered the greatest engineer and inventor of his species. He personally designed most of their advanced technology, including the exosuits used by their warrior class. That information made Jake even more nervous. If the Emperor was coming to judge his work, then Jake was about to be evaluated by someone who had spent centuries perfecting the technology he had tried to modify in 3 days. When the Imperial dreadnought finally arrived, it filled the viewport windows with its massive bulk. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, with organic curves and flowing lines that made it look like a living creature instead of a machine. Weapon ports covered its hull like scales, and energy shields flickered around it like a protective aura. The communication from the ship was brief and direct. Kepler Station prepare to receive an Imperial delegation. The Emperor wishes to meet with the human Jake Morrison immediately. Stone looked at Jake with worry in her eyes. You do not have to do this. We can refuse and face whatever consequences come. Jake shook his head and stood up. No, I created this situation and I need to face it. Besides, if the Emperor wanted to destroy the station, he would have done it already. As he prepared to meet the most powerful being in the Zephyrian Empire, Jake tried to remember everything Amy had told him about alien customs and protocols. He hoped that being polite and respectful would be enough to avoid making things worse. The docking bay was cleared of all personnel except for essential security as the Imperial shuttle approached. Jake stood near the airlock wearing his cleanest coveralls and trying not to look as nervous as he felt. Commander Stone and her guards were positioned nearby, but everyone knew their weapons would be useless if things went wrong. The shuttle that docked was itself larger than most ships that visited Kepler Station. It was covered in the same organic armor as the mothership and hummed with barely contained energy. When the airlock opened, Jake could feel a pressure change as atmosphere from the shuttle mixed with station air. The first figure to emerge was Kethvar, but he looked completely different than when Jake had last seen him. His hybrid suit had been upgraded with new armor plating that gleamed like polished gold. Imperial symbols were engraved on his chest and shoulders, marking him as a high-ranking member of the Emperor's personal guard. Behind Kethvar came other Zephyrian warriors, all wearing exosuits that looked like works of art as much as military equipment. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, and their weapons were works of engineering beauty that Jake could not help but admire even in his nervousness. Finally, the Emperor himself stepped through the airlock, and Jake understood immediately why this being ruled an empire that spanned dozens of star systems. Even among his own towering species, the Emperor was impressive, standing nearly 9 feet tall with scales that shifted color in the light. His exosuit was clearly ancient, but maintained perfectly with details and craftsmanship that spoke of centuries, of refinement. But it was the Emperor's eyes that held Jake's attention. They were the same golden color as Kethvar's, but these eyes held intelligence and experience that seemed to see through everything they looked at. When the Emperor's gaze fell on Jake, he felt like every secret he had ever kept was being examined and judged. Kethvar stepped forward and spoke in perfect standard without needing his translator robot. Jake Morrison, this one, presents Emperor Thekmor, ruler of the Zephyrian Empire and master of all technological arts. The Emperor has traveled far to meet the human who dared to improve upon imperial designs. Jake swallowed hard and tried to remember how to breathe as the most powerful alien in known space studied him with those ancient golden eyes. Emperor Thekmor moved through Kepler Station's docking bay with the fluid grace of someone who had worn an exosuit for centuries. His ancient armor seemed to flow around him like liquid metal, and Jake could hear the quiet whisper of perfectly balanced servos and actuators. The Emperor's golden eyes swept over the human facilities, taking in every detail of their construction and design. Jake stood as straight as he could and tried not to show how nervous he felt. Commander Stone and her security team were positioned around the bay, but everyone knew they were completely outmatched. The Emperor's personal guards were warriors who had trained their entire lives for combat, and their weapons could probably cut through the station's hull like paper. "Jake Morrison," the Emperor said in heavily accented but clear standard. His voice was deep and resonant like distant thunder. "This one has heard interesting reports about your work." Kethvar moved to stand beside his Emperor, and Jake could see that the alien warrior's hybrid suit had been extensively modified since leaving the station. New components had been integrated seamlessly with Jake's original work, and the whole system looked more refined and elegant than before. "Your Majesty," Jake said and gave a small bow. He was not sure if that was the right protocol, but Dr. Rodriguez had said that showing respect was always safe with alien cultures. The Emperor's expression was unreadable as he studied Jake's prosthetic arms and work-stained coveralls. This one has spent many cycles perfecting the art of enhancement technology. This one has created suits that can lift mountains and see across star systems. Yet you take broken imperial craftsmanship and make it better with crude human components. Jake felt heat rise in his face at the word crude, but he kept his voice calm. "I just used what I had available, Your Majesty. Human technology is different from yours, but it can still solve problems." The Emperor made a sound that might have been amusement or annoyance. "Different, yes. Kethvar's suit now has capabilities that exceed original Imperial specifications. Enhanced targeting systems, improved strength, amplification, expanded sensory range. This one is curious how human tinkerer achieved what Empire's greatest minds could not." Kethvar stepped forward and activated his suit's display systems. Holographic readouts appeared in the air showing performance data and technical specifications. The human approach is not elegant like Imperial biotechnology, but it is effective. Modular components allow for rapid repair and upgrade. Redundant systems prevent total failure if one part is damaged. Jake watched the holographic displays and felt a mixture of pride and fear. His work had clearly impressed the aliens, but he still did not know if that was good or bad for his future health. This one wishes to understand human engineering methods, the Emperor said, and gestured for his guards to bring forward a large container. This one has brought a test. The container was opened to reveal something that took Jake's breath away. Inside was what looked like a crown made of the same organic metal as Zephyrian exosuits, but far more complex and beautiful. Fiber optic. Cables wove through living metal in patterns that seemed to shift and flow even when not powered. Neural interface ports gleamed like jewels along the crown's inner surface. The crown of heroes, Kethvar explained reverently. Worn by the greatest warriors of our people for over 500 cycles. It was damaged in the Battle of the Seven Suns and has not functioned since. Dr. Rodriguez had moved closer and was scanning the crown with her medical equipment. Her eyes were wide with amazement as she read the data. The neural pathways are incredibly complex. This thing was designed to interface with multiple brain regions simultaneously. Enhanced reflexes, tactical analysis battle prediction systems. The Emperor's golden eyes never left Jake's face. Imperial engineers have studied this crown for 3 centuries. All have declared it beyond repair. The bio-neural networks have degraded beyond recovery, and the quantum processing cores have decoherent. If human methods can restore function, then this one will acknowledge that your species has mastered the art of making. Jake felt his mouth go dry as he realized what was being asked of him. This was not just a repair job, it was a test that would determine how the Zephyrian Empire viewed humanity. If he failed, they might decide humans were just crude tinkerers who got lucky once. If he succeeded, it could change the relationship between their species forever. How long do I have? Jake asked. This one will remain at your station until the task is complete or proven impossible, the Emperor replied. This one has waited 3 centuries for an answer. This one can wait longer if necessary. Jake nodded and looked at the crown more carefully. Even without his tools, he could see that it was far more complex than Kethvar's exosuit. The bio-neural networks were like nothing he had ever encountered, and the quantum processing cores were technology that humans barely understood. But as he studied the ancient device, Jake began to see patterns. The basic principles were similar to what he had worked with before, even if the execution was far more sophisticated. The crown was essentially a very advanced neural interface that enhanced the wearer's mental capabilities the same way an exosuit enhanced physical abilities. I will need to examine it properly in my workshop, Jake said. And I will need help from Dr. Rodriguez to understand the biological components. The Emperor gestured to his guards, who carefully lifted the crown and prepared to follow Jake to the repair bay. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake noticed that more Zephyrian warriors had come aboard from the shuttle. They positioned themselves at key locations with the professional efficiency of a security detail that had done this many times before. In the repair bay, Jake cleared his largest workbench and had the crown placed under his best examination lights. Up close, he could see that the damage was extensive. The bio-neural pathways had indeed degraded over time, and several of the quantum cores showed signs of cascade failure. Lisa set up her recording equipment while Amy began detailed scans of the crown's biological components. The Emperor and Kethvar watched everything with intense interest, asking occasional questions about human diagnostic techniques. The organic components are not completely dead, Amy reported after an hour of analysis. They have gone dormant like seeds waiting for the right conditions to grow again. If we could provide the right nutrients and electrical stimulation, might be able to revive them. Jake was examining the quantum cores with an electron microscope and shaking his head. These are burned out completely. The crystal matrices have collapsed, and there is no way to rebuild them with the same technology. The Emperor's expression grew darker as he listened to their analysis. Then it cannot be repaired. This one expected as much, but hoped human ingenuity might find a path where imperial science failed. Jake looked up from the microscope and met the Emperor's golden eyes. "I did not say it could not be repaired, Your Majesty. I said it could not be repaired with the same technology." He walked over to his storage lockers and pulled out components he had been saving for special projects. Neural processors from human, medical implants, quantum computers from research stations, and biocompatible materials developed for prosthetic surgery. "The crown has evolved over 3 centuries, Jake explained as he laid out the human components next to the alien artifact. "It is not the same device that was originally built. If we try to restore it to original specifications, we are fighting against 300 years of natural change." The Emperor leaned forward with interest. "Explain." Jake pointed to areas where the bio-neural pathways had changed and adapted over time. "Instead of trying to reverse these changes, what if we work with them? Use human technology to bridge the gaps and enhance the evolved systems rather than replace them." For the next several hours, Jake outlined his approach while the Emperor asked detailed technical questions. It became clear that the alien ruler was not just a political leader, but a master engineer who understood every aspect of the technology they were discussing. "Interesting," the Emperor said finally. "You propose to create a hybrid device that is part ancient Zephyrian craftsmanship, part human innovation, and part natural technological evolution." Jake nodded. "It will not be the same crown that was originally built, but it might be something better." The Emperor was quiet for a long time, staring at the damaged crown and considering Jake's proposal. Finally, he spoke in a voice that carried the weight of absolute authority. "Proceed, human engineer. Show this one what your species can achieve when given the chance." Jake worked for 18 straight hours on the Crown of Heroes, while Emperor Thekmor watched every move he made. The alien ruler sat in a chair that had been brought from his shuttle and observed the repair process with the focused attention of someone who truly understood what was happening. The first step was the most delicate work Jake had ever attempted. Using microscopic tools, he carefully removed the damaged quantum cores, while preserving the bio-neural pathways that had grown around them over 3 centuries. Each connection had to be mapped and recorded so that the new human processors could be integrated without losing the crown's evolved capabilities. Dr. Rodriguez worked alongside him, monitoring the biological components and providing nutrients to keep the dormant neural networks alive during the repair process. She had created a solution that mimicked Zephyrian brain chemistry and was feeding it through tiny tubes directly into the organic pathways. "The neural networks are responding," she reported as she watched her scanners. "They are beginning to show activity as we provide stimulation and nutrients. It is like watching a sleeping brain wake up." Lisa documented everything with cameras and sensors, creating a complete record of the hybrid repair process. She had never seen Jake work with such precision and focus. His prosthetic hands moved with perfect control, placing components that were smaller than human hair into positions that had to be accurate to within micrometers. The Emperor occasionally asked questions about specific techniques or materials, but mostly he just watched and learned. Jake found the alien ruler's presence both intimidating and inspiring. Here was someone who had spent centuries perfecting the art of technological creation, and he was taking the time to understand human methods. "Your approach is fundamentally different from imperial engineering," the Emperor observed as Jake integrated a human quantum processor with the Crown's organic neural matrix. "We seek to create perfect harmony between biology and technology. You seek to create functional cooperation between incompatible systems." Jake paused in his work and looked at the Emperor. "Maybe that is because humans are used to working with Incompatible systems. We have to make old parts work with new designs and civilian technology work for military purposes. We learned to build bridges between things that were never meant to work together. The Emperor nodded slowly. An interesting philosophy. Imperial doctrine teaches that perfection comes from unity and harmony. You suggest that strength can come from diversity and adaptation. As the hours passed, Jake began to see the crown coming back to life. The human quantum processors were successfully interfacing with the evolved bio-neural networks, and the ancient organic pathways were responding to electrical stimulation. But the real breakthrough came when he realized that the crown had developed capabilities that were not in the original design. "Look at this," he said, and pointed to a section where new neural pathways had grown over the centuries. These connections were not part of the original crown. They developed naturally as the bio-neural networks tried to repair themselves. Dr. Rodriguez scanned the area and her eyes went wide. These pathways are connecting regions that were never meant to work together. If they are functional, they would allow the crown to process multiple types of information simultaneously in ways the original design never intended. Jake smiled as he understood what had happened. The crown evolved. It spent 3 centuries trying to fix itself, and in the process it became something new, something potentially better than the original. Instead of trying to remove these evolved pathways, Jake decided to enhance them with human neural processors. He built interface bridges that allowed the new connections to function properly while adding computational power that the organic systems could not provide alone. The Emperor leaned forward with intense interest as he watched Jake work with the evolved systems. "You are not restoring the crown to original specifications. You are helping it become what it was trying to evolve into." "Exactly," Jake replied as he made the final connections. "Sometimes the best way to fix something is not to put it back the way it was, but to help it become what it wants to be." The moment of truth came when Jake activated the completed crown for the first time in 3 centuries. Lights began to flicker along the bio-neural pathways as dormant systems came online. The quantum processors hummed quietly as they synced with the organic networks, and holographic displays appeared in the air showing diagnostic information. But what happened next surprised everyone, including Jake. The crown began to glow with a soft golden light that pulsed in rhythm with its neural activity. Patterns of energy flowed through the bio-neural pathways, like thoughts made visible, and the air around the crown shimmered with electromagnetic fields. "Incredible," Dr. Rodriguez whispered as she watched her scanners. "The neural activity is off the charts. The crown is not just functional, it is operating at levels far beyond the original specifications." Emperor Thecamore stood slowly and approached the glowing crown with something like reverence in his golden eyes. He reached out carefully and touched one of the neural interface ports. Immediately, the crown's glow intensified, and new patterns of light flowed through its pathways. "This one can feel its power," the Emperor said quietly. "Enhanced tactical analysis, predictive combat algorithms, sensory amplification beyond anything this one has experienced. The crown has indeed evolved into something greater than its original form." Jake felt a deep satisfaction as he watched the ancient artifact respond to the Emperor's touch. It was the same feeling he always got when he brought something broken back to life, but magnified 1,000 times. This was not just a successful repair, it was the creation of something entirely new. "Will you test it properly?" Jake asked. The Emperor looked at him for a long moment, then slowly lifted the crown and placed it on his head. The moment the neural interface ports made contact with his scales, the crown blazed with light that filled the entire repair bay. The Emperor's eyes began to glow with the same golden radiance, and his breathing became slow and deep. For several minutes, the Emperor stood perfectly still while the crown interfaced with his mind. Jake could see data flowing through the bioneural pathways as the ancient ruler experienced capabilities that had been lost for 3 centuries. Finally, the Emperor opened his eyes, and the crown's glow faded to a gentle pulse. "Remarkable," the Emperor said, and his voice carried a tone of wonder that Jake had not heard before. "The crown provides not just enhanced capabilities, but new ways of thinking, new ways of perceiving reality. This one sees battle strategies that were invisible before and understands technologies in ways that were impossible without this interface." Jake nodded, understanding exactly what the Emperor meant. The best tools did not just help you do things. Better, they helped you see possibilities you never knew existed. The Emperor carefully removed the crown and placed it back on the workbench. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He removed his own ceremonial crown, the symbol of his imperial authority, and offered it to Jake. "This one declares Jake Morrison to be a master of the engineering arts," the Emperor announced formally. "This one offers the human engineer a place of honor in the imperial court and access to all technologies of the Zephyrian Empire." Jake stared at the offered crown and felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being proposed. A place in an alien imperial court, access to technologies beyond human understanding, the chance to work with the greatest engineers in the galaxy. But after a moment, he gently pushed the crown back toward the Emperor. "Thank you, Your Majesty, but my place is here. There are always broken things that need fixing and people who need help. That is what I do." The Emperor looked surprised, then slowly began to smile. It was the first time Jake had seen any expression other than stern authority on the alien ruler's face. "This one understands. The greatest engineers are not those who seek glory, but those who seek to solve problems. Very well, Jake Morrison, this one proposes a different arrangement." Over the next hour, the Emperor outlined his proposal while Kethavar and his guards prepared documents on portable computers. The Zephyrian Empire would establish a permanent research station in the Kepler system where human and alien engineers could work together on joint projects. Jake would be the human liaison, with full authority to share technological innovations between the two species. "The crown you have restored will be the first artifact in a new museum of hybrid technologies," the Emperor explained. "It will represent the beginning of a new age of cooperation between our peoples." Jake looked around his cluttered repair bay and tried to imagine it as the headquarters for an interstellar research program. It seemed impossible, but then again, a week ago, he never would have imagined successfully repairing a 300-year-old alien artifact. "I accept," Jake said finally, "but I have one condition. Any technology we develop together gets shared freely with both species. No military secrets, no restricted access, just knowledge that helps everyone." The Emperor nodded approvingly. "Agreed. Knowledge that is hoarded serves no one. Knowledge that is shared makes everyone stronger."